were lots of trains to catch, but soon there will be none. I'll have to buy a bike, 'cause I can't afford a car. Oh, Dr. Beeching, what a naughty man you are.
The song blares throughout the wretched sidings, the air thick with regret. Carcasses litter the floor, fire blazes, melting the dead down to something else so they can be useful once more. The heat is stifling. I sit alone, waiting for death's claw to wrap around my body as my mind begins to wander. What a grand life I'd led. I excelled in my work, the pride of my cohort. But as I sit here, I can't be sure that I'm proud of my life, that I'm satisfied. I was revered by my colleagues and our customers and had plenty of commendations, but I'd never felt close to any of them, never felt especially fulfilled. We'd called each other brothers, but didn't know each other at all. We were all too caught up in our work, too focused on ourselves and how great we were. "Huzzah!" I said to the others. "Now begins a new era." "Indeed, D9000. Back then we were only known by our assigned numbers. Out with the old and in with the new. Isn't that right, Tin Kettle?" The address looked at us, confused and offended. "Oh, look at him, doesn't even know what to say." "Naturally," I said, "I too would be speechless when faced with such a grand sight. After all, we are revolutionary. We come to a yard and improve it," my brothers responded in unison. The prior generation seemed bemused, but not impressed. Not that I thought their opinion mattered at the time, they were scum, and we were there to fix that. We all started to sing, to the puzzlement of the smokers. "Oh, Dr. Beeching, what have you done? There once were lots of trains to catch, but soon there shall be none." Our song was interrupted as footsteps echoed throughout the yard. It was the manager. "All right, everyone," he boomed to the crowd. "We have some new workers here. They'll be taking over some of your duties. D9000, I'm putting you to work on the Eastern Line, replacing 60103. "Yes, sir, I won't disappoint." I turned to 60103, ready to brag, but he just looked at me with a devastated expression. And then he left. As I sit here, waiting for death's torch, I realize how arrogant I had been. I realize my hubris. I realize how futile this all was. This battle between old and new, smokers and Deltics, classical and contemporary. This stupid war had poisoned both sides. The smokers, once grand, respected, and level-headed, were now constantly on edge. Constantly snapping at others, constantly scared, constantly angry. And the Deltics, who were supposed to be grander, smoother, more efficient, were reduced to brutes, schoolyard bullies. We didn't fulfill our purpose. Most of us were rougher than the smokers, and we were vainer, meaning we took longer to prepare for work despite the fact we were intended to be quicker to start up. But none of that stopped us from feeling superior. Thankfully, some of us were sane, and some were compassionate. Some revered the smokers. Others, myself included, were blatantly disrespectful at every turn. By this time, I had permanently replaced 60103, who was unable to enjoy his well-deserved retirement because of the prospect that awaited him once manager decided he wasn't useful anymore. Although back then, I didn't see it this way. I was of course rejoicing me and my brother's success at replacing our predecessors and revolutionizing the industry. We had taken to our jobs wonderfully, acting as the well-oiled machines we were. Many of our customers loved the new technology, but others weren't so happy. They often complained of the black smog, of the grating noise, and of the pungent smells. One day, I passed by an old employee and called out, taunting them. "Feeling fatigued?" I asked. "Having a rest? Or has the manager decided that you're really useless? No matter, it'll all be over soon. You'll die the same way you lived, with fire and smoke, with cinders and ashes." The poor smoker looked appalled, but I just laughed. A callous, cold, metallic laugh that no doubt sent chills down the spines of those who heard it. As I sit alone, waiting for the hook of death to wrap its wretched phalanges around my frame, I begin to see the steps that led me here. If only I had known what was coming for me, I would have been kinder instead of taunting the predecessors for their fate, the very fate that has now befallen me. What a horrible thing to joke about, death. But to my brothers and I, it was the peak of comedy. Not because we were intentionally malicious, no. But from inception we were taught that we were the saviors of our company. The saviors of BR, taking over from the old, crude smokers. Our company had turned us against one another with the promise of fame, and that fame got to me. Fame. Fleeting, fleeting fame. My old route used to take me past Doncaster. One afternoon, as I stopped there to drop off my load and to refill on diesel, I spotted an old smoker sitting at the station. His face was downcast, and his sigh heavy. I looked over at him smugly, as the customers all praised me for my quick and smooth delivery. Good, I thought. Let him see how obsolete he now is. He looked away, tears forming in his eyes. Excellent. As I drove out of the station and continued my route, I sung out, "Oh, Dr. Beeching, what have you done? There once were lots of trains to catch, and soon there shall be none." I sneered at him, whispering so only he could hear. "Your time is up, Tin Pot. Hope you enjoy retirement." And then I continued on my way, cackling to myself. The top of my route was Edinburgh Waverley, a large commercial and industrial centre where many companies fought for customers' attention. Of course, being the capital of Scotland, it was also the destination for many important people and packages. The station was bustling when I'd arrived. Everyone was shoulder to shoulder. There was barely any room to breathe. Quite stifling, but perfect for me. The more people in one area, the more customers, the more praise. I stood there with a smug expression on my face, expecting everyone to swarm me. But nobody came. They all stared out into the distance as a whistle pierced the air. The heavy sound of machinery and steam echoed throughout as a newly preserved smoker roared towards us. The Mallard. Even then, I had to admit she was especially beautiful, despite my prejudices. She was graceful, with smooth flowing curves. Despite being a smoker, she did look somewhat like our Celtics. Everyone swarmed around her, and the gorgeous Coronation Scot played over the station intercom. I was cast aside, jealousy boiling in my hull. The Mallard looked at me smugly, and opened her mouth to brag, but I left before she could speak. As I wait for death's torch to burn into me, to cut me up, I realize that fame is only temporary. People praised me at first because I was new, but once that luster had worn off, no one cared. Then preservation started, and they stopped caring about me at all. Their attention had moved to relics of the past because they were now retro, antique, or in the mind of enthusiasts, endangered. And this meant that, much to my chagrin, I was now in the shadows, doing work without thanks or praise. Instead of being considered shiny and new, I was now filth, a monster coming to steal work from the elders of society. I roared through the countryside at an exhilarating pace. The lack of praise recently had been getting to me, and the manager putting me on this fast run was just what I needed. The countryside was beautiful this time of year, the lush grass covered in orange and red leaves. Trees, farmland, cities, towns, fields, they all entered and exited my vision in a flash. I saw a plume of white smoke ahead and knew what it meant. My self-control and self-reflection went completely out the window, and I taunted the old fellow as I passed. I was determined to beat him to the next station, determined to prove I was still the shiny new technology, the pride of Britain, and not some good-for-nothing invader. I pushed myself to the limits, utterly ignoring the safety of myself and my passengers. A loud groan rang out, and I felt a cramp form. My engine spluttered a few times, and gave out, a large plume of black smog spilling out of my intakes. I came to a stop. A whistle rung throughout the countryside. Oh dear. The chuffing of a large metal machine approached, began to slow down. The moment between it being in motion and being stopped was rather short, but it felt like eternity. The anticipation of his reaction, the knowing of the taunting to come, it almost hurt. But once the moment had passed and the teasing began, I'd wished we were still sitting in silence. What did you say earlier? Really useless, I think it was. That we were only good for standing there and looking pretty? Well, seems the tables have turned. Only thing is you can't even look pretty. Scotsman laughed. I only groaned in response. Never you mind, Spam Can. We'll get you to the next station. Spam Can, I screeched. Oh, I'll show you, Spam Can, you heap of old metal. Just you wait until I'm repaired. All right, no need to burst your engine, he exclaimed, smugness painted on his face. I just sighed. It's no use, Deltic, you can't win! He was right. I couldn't. I may have won the battle all those years ago, but the smokers had clearly won the war. I hear the workmen talking. The foreman points over at me. The cutter nods and starts to make his way over. As he does so, I take in my surroundings one final time. Rusted shells of locomotives past litter the ground. A large fire blazes in a rusted metal building, melting down those that came before into new materials, taking them from obsolescence into a form that can be useful once more. The heat from the fire gives me a taste of my fate, creeping ever closer as the greasy man in overalls walks to me, lighting his torch. I hear a click, and the flames sear into my hull, cutting me into pieces as the machinery of the scrapyard activates, and Death's claw groans loudly, flexing its rusted metal joints. And now, knowing my fate is sealed, there's nothing more I can say but, "Oh, Dr. Beeching, what have you done? There once were lots of trains to catch, but soon there shall be none."